it's kind of like a light and dark polarity kind of thing, like what's above and what's below the surface. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that we see on the surface, but it's like also like the iceberg, that most of the depth is things that you can't see. Most of the complexity is down underneath, and it takes a willingness to kind of step into that dark place, but softly. And in there are where we find the inner child. We find all the balance. We find all the pieces of ourselves that we're ready to integrate. And as you step into that, it's just kind of like not being afraid of what you're going to find, because there's nothing that you can find down there. There's no monsters down there. It's a kid, right? It's just like little you in a little dark place, like, I'm scared, right? And that's what it always is. It's not the monster that we think is lurking under the surface. Mm-hmm. It's just us, and you gotta go down and be like, give her a hug and be like, oh, like everything's okay. And that's where we start to feel safe again. You start to feel safe because of your own choices, your own integration of your own experiences. Mm-hmm. And that's going to make you feel safe on a level that helps you move forward in a way that you can't move forward unless you do it. So I think like the well-being is an overall sense of well-being that has to do with stepping into, you shuffled these, right?
Yes.
Stepping into who you are.
So
this is the resolution reading.
All right.
Jade, are you excited?
I am.
You're the first real person to get this done, besides me doing it for myself and just playing around and making things up. So this is going to be the center of your resolution reading. I'm hoping this is going to be like a little bit of a squeeze. I could not find a table that was the right size. So what we're doing is identifying kind of a theme for what brings us from 2023 into 2024, and how to work with experiences and lessons and information that you've been receiving. I'm prone to say we. That's how I talk. So I'm going to try to say you. We're talking about you. We're talking about you, Jade, not me. So I'm going to try to verbalize it that way, but I'm not great at that. So this is going to be the main theme, and then we're going to see how that comes through the year. These are going to be the seasons. I was trying to remember which way I laid it out. So there's going to be 4 more. So you have the main theme here, and then 4 more. These are the seasons. So we have winter, spring, summer, and fall, and that's going to bring us all the way through the year.
Okay.
You're going to see me reposition these a lot because this table is kind of small. So flexibility, that's kind of might be like an underlying theme. That's not the major theme, but that might be like an underlying spiritual theme. I don't know if I'm going to be... I will forget to do this.
So, show the cards.
Yeah, okay. You might have to either remind or say things out loud. You're going to have to talk more probably. Okay, so right now this is the main theme. We have the seasons. The next thing that we're going to pull out is... one of these is going to be for 2023, kind of where you're at right now, or what you've been going through, that sort of thing. And then we'll pull for 2024, kind of what we're moving into.
Okay.
Okay, that one's... All right, so we'll just flip it as we go. 2023, all right? I'm like, I don't know. Let's see what 2024 says. Energetic clearing. So that kind of makes sense together, doesn't it?
Yeah, grief and energetic clearing.
Grief so here's like maybe like an underlying theme. It's not something that I'm very good at doing. Miraculously, amazingly, everything I need always comes. Love is opening me to receive beyond anything I imagine. Okay, so that... some cards and things like messages can be hard to receive because they seem like that's not the first card you want to see is grief, but you don't know what you're doing with it yet. As you see, you're moving through it. It says tears are what happen when the ice in the heart melts. Well, that's interesting. Isn't that interesting though? Because we've been talking kind of about blocks, what's like in the way of getting to where you want to get, and even with that big old picture of the heart. That makes a lot of sense, kind of with what we've been going through. us as a team. we're a team now. No choice. So 2023 with the grief, it's kind of like something is breaking away from you or off of you. It's melting away, and there's like a heaviness and a block that's like releasing. And into 2024, it says, during crisis, the Holy One herself, that's interesting, may be emptying you of fear and attachments, preparing you to receive her luminous plan.
Hit me with that luminous plan, please.
Well, and that's what, but to get there, right, it's during crisis. And what happens after crisis, any type of crisis, any type of change, anything that we lose in our lives is going to be a form of grief. Trauma, shame, guilt, those are actually things that form when we don't deal with grief. Those are like holding on to grief, and then what becomes of it. So like shame becomes grief that is a part of ourselves, but guilt is something that we carry based on, you know, something we may have done, but we don't know where they're always coming from. So they come from like this deep place, and when we sit with ourselves, we'll show kind of like what that means and where it's coming from. So for 2023, we have grief, which is that ice melting off the heart, and then
am I willing?
Are you willing to let it? So that's what you've already been going through. It's not like, oh, here's what's upcoming. Here's what's to be maybe like afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. This is what you've already been doing. We're coming to the end of this, but it's moving into, it shifts into this next thing if you're working with this energy.
Right.
Do you want to read that?
Sure. You are on the edge of something great. Can you feel it? Yes, there is risk, uncertainty, and imperfections ahead. Failure is certain, and vulnerability is a requirement. You must be brave and trust yourself more than ever before. You will reach the dream, but you must stretch yourself into a new level of belief and willingness in order to move forward with courage. Today's soul action. Be brave, follow your heart's compass, and lift the lid on your own dreams. Today's mantra, it's possible. Okay. It's interesting.
Why don't you, I'm going to pull one more like this for here.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you pull this one so just kind of see what the main theme is going to be.
Okay. Family.
That's the first one, what you pulled from earlier.
Dreams are where your mind translates the divine. Interesting.
You're the one who shuffled those cards yourself.
Yes.
So this is kind of like, I didn't show you yet, but this is maybe like just an underlying like sense of, if I don't know what to focus on. That's kind of what these are here.
Okay.
Flexibility, faith, gratitude. Like if you don't know, if you feel confused and where am I supposed to focus next?
Does my life have room for more pleasure and play? I hope so.
So into 2024, that sounds like a much better feeling, don't you think? Probably.
Yes.
Like feels a lot lighter than like moving through this grief. So as you're moving through it, that's the most important part, is to be working with this, like being willing to work with this, and then you shift into this, because you could prolong this as long as you want. That's what, I mean, that's where we wake up in our lives, at this place. So like as you move into the next phase, it's going to be a lot more, like a lot lighter, a lot more fun. And I think that has to do with letting some things go.
Right.
Or just like, I don't think it has anything to do with you in particular, like something that you've done or that you're holding on to, as much as it's just a sense of something that's been buried. Like not, I think it's not conscious awareness stuff that you've been working through. And then like that feeling under, you know, that we're talking about, like what's the lesson? Like what's your spirit trying to show you? I mean, you have a birthday coming up too, right? So I mean, but surprises, like it's kind of like that sense of like it already said better than I can imagine.
Yeah. Something
better than you can imagine starts to unfold from there. We're gonna move into, start with the winter one, but I'm trying to remember which cards I used. I like this one. So why don't you flip over winter to see
inner child.
Okay, so this is going to be the major theme moving into the next season. So 2023, this is going to be your main theme you're working on, like probably expanding your family, but opening up and like opening your life up to more of that like intimate type of core, love that makes you feel safe and secure, which is probably like a place where this is changing for you. Like you've had those changes as an adult, you've had enough going on in your life that has disrupted you, that now it's time, to settle into who you are and where you are and to feel safe. And that has a lot, it's really easy to just keep our guards up when we're in this place with having to take care of ourselves, especially when we're grieving. We have walls that come up that are maybe start as boundaries or start as lessons, or they're going to become boundaries and lessons, but they're a lot harsher in the beginning. Right. They're a lot less clear why.
Right.
So like you're just at this place because you're at a place. It's just like a life point in like this particular journey that you're on, whether it's a lesson or purpose. I don't know what it particularly is, but it's the time for that like shift to happen. Like you've learned enough about yourself at this point that it's time for like a new chapter, but it is time for things not to feel so harsh.
Right.
And to start to feel a little bit softer.
All things work best in conjunction with all things. I do actually have a lot of those crystals that are listed on there.
Well, and notice here too, it says chakra balance, equilibrium. So that is what you're gaining here. It's just like there's no parts of you or parts of your life or any of that that's not meant to be integrated, right? It doesn't have to be shown or expressed. It all depends on what you want, but every part of your life is a part of you, has made you who you are. So to like, for those experiences not to be blocking things, but to be nurturing like experiences, lessons, wisdom,
right,
into the future. And so do you feel how like that's starting to shift from here? So we're here. We're still in this year, right? This is winter. And then as you move into that, so we're here and stepping into that, into the winter season, the first thing to focus on would be your own sense of well-being.
Right. I mean, I do feel it a little bit. Like, there are some things that I've sat with that I feel like are slowly, melting. Ice in the heart melts.
And it's a soft thing. It's not something like, especially grieving. Grieving is one of those things that you can't push through. You can't rush. It comes in layers.
Right.
And so all of this comes in layers. Like whatever we're grieving, it could be something that was stolen from us. There's all kinds of things that we can grieve, like time that we can't get back.
Right.
Lies that we believed, things that we did that sewed into other people's delusions or whatever because we wanted that. Those are all kinds of things that we can grieve. But like as you step deeper into that, so here's me again, not showing any of this stuff because that's how I am. So we're stepping into winter, which I didn't show yet, but I will in a second. It's like this sense of well-being, but also not placing any expectations on yourself. So as you go deeper, which is where like we started this week with the new moon as well. The theme of this particular new moon with Scorpio is this sense of, it's kind of like a light and dark polarity kind of thing, like what's above and what's below the surface. So there's a lot that we see on the surface, but it's like also like the iceberg, that most of the depth is things that you can't see. Most of the complexity is down underneath, and it takes a willingness to kind of step into that dark place, but softly. And in there are where we find the inner child. We find all the balance. We find all the pieces of ourselves that we're ready to integrate And as you step into that, it's just kind of like not being afraid of what you're going to find, because there's nothing that you can find down there. There's no monsters down there. It's a kid, right? It's just like little you in a little dark place, like, I'm scared, right? And that's what it always is. It's not the monster that we think is lurking under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
It's just us, and we're gotta go down and be like, you know, give her a hug and be like, oh, like everything's okay. And that's where we start to feel safe again. You start to feel safe because of your own choices, your own integration of your own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to make you feel safe on a level that helps you move forward in a way that you can't move forward unless you do it. So I think like the well-being is an overall sense of well-being that has to do with stepping into, you shuffled these, right?
Yes.
Stepping into who you are, so that way that you can.
The universe is speaking. Listen with all your heart.
I think that's just that sense of balance.
Mm-hmm.
That like everything you do has like a ripple effect. Everything that you do. So every choice you make, big, small, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's all just about what puts you back to your equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that is going to be having to go into uncomfortable places. But the best time to do that is when the energy is quiet, when the energy is facilitating it. So every new moon, do you have to go into like some weird, awkward trauma place, or, you know, and figure out what's causing grief and heaviness and needs to melt away? No, this is just, sometimes there's energy that helps us go into those places.
Right. And
if we're going to do it when we can do it gently, rather than having to force our way in. Sometimes we do have to force our way in to solve problems, but it's not the best. If we can be in like this flow, and that's kind of the point of this whole thing,
mm-hmm.
is to see what's coming and to be able to step into it kind of more softly and be like, oh, I'm going through this because of this. So I'm right now, before you even get to winter, you're stepping into like this place of depth within yourself, sorting this out, feeling, am I willing to let these things softly melt away from me? You're not breaking anything off.
Right.
You're letting them remove themselves from you because you're going into this soft place. You're moving forward into that sense of how you would treat one of your kids when they're afraid.
Right.
And that's how you treat yourself.
That makes sense.
And as you do that, it's just like unlocking like these little doors. And like, so it doesn't always have to be like this overwhelming sense of like, what's in my way? What is it now? What is this again? It just, each little thing feels more subtle as you go through it.
Right.
So how do you feel about that first part of the year? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think I resonate a lot with it, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to move into the next. Let's do the overall theme, kind of like for what's coming in the next season.
Okay.
And then you can flip it if you want.
Inner strength.
Okay, and this is the Six of Cups, which is, it's kind of like this emotional sense of like looking back on, I want to say even fondly, it can be looking back fondly, but it's just kind of like looking back on experiences with a lighter, like, not kind of a nostalgic, like a sense of lightness, but it's coming off of a time of loss,
mm-hmm.
of feeling like left out, or like you lost something you're letting go of something, but it's looking back on that with, I guess, kinder eyes, maybe the kinder eyes of experience, like you've had some time to sit with it,
right.
And now you can look at the entirety of the picture with like a softer focus.
Okay.
Let your life burst forth from the seeds of creation.
Ooh.
It says fertility. Interesting, like, too, if you're paying, I missed pieces just because there's so much going on, but like if you pay attention to the colors, because these are chakra cards,
mm-hmm.
and so are these.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like a sense of like heart, This is going to, like, your solar plexus or your sacral. So that's kind of like pulling it down into your body. So the sense of getting out of your head, you're going to have to, like, I don't know, whether that's movement oriented, pleasure oriented, play oriented, what's going to clear you, maybe doing something more active,
right,
to clear. I don't know what that is, if that's by yourself or if that is a family oriented thing. It could be both.
right.
But to let that kind of clear is going to be like a lot more active, I think, and enjoyable. All right, so this is what's moving from winter into spring.
Happiness and inner strength. Okay.
And I think it's kind of like a self-fulfilling cycle. So as you are feeling like more, I would say confident, but I think it is this sense of just being gentler with yourself. Will help you feel more balanced just overall. And the inner strength part is just like that resilient spirit, I think, of knowing again and again, reminding yourself again and again that all of the experiences, not that they were necessary, but what you've walked through at this point, life can come from that, not death. You know, does that make sense though? Like, it's not like we can choose to dampen ourselves down based on what we've experienced in the past, and that's what this is going to do. Grief is always going to kind of like take some of the color out of life.
Right.
So we can't necessarily control that, but when we work with it, and we say play with it because that's kind of strong, but when we do start to play with the energy a little bit and choose, like, I can be happy and grieving at the same time, like I can look at those things a little softer.
Right. That's
like this building that inner strength. It's inner child. You have to go in and do the vulnerable stuff to unlock that. And then it's like being happy, being softer, being lighter. It doesn't feel vulnerable in a loss of security kind of way. You know, when we harden ourselves to protect ourselves,
right.
It'll be like this integration of softness and security, where it's like I don't have to wall up to protect myself. I can trust that I move around in the world, and I can choose the experiences and places and people that so into me, that make me happy, that are, I can choose to be happy on my own.
Yeah.
Tame and attain. Well, it's also interesting too with the chariot, because you're kind of moving. That's what if you look at literally, the chariot is literally a card of horses pulling a chariot. So I think it's like a matter of you're in control of the direction that you go. So like just being aware that whatever you do has a lot of power.
You know the answer already. Do I?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, is there a direction that you feel like you need to go in, or maybe that you hold yourself back from?
I think so. Yeah. Like, I don't know, I guess the way I kind of see or view myself sometimes, and maybe some of it's physical, other parts it's, you know, internal things. So yeah, I mean, I think so.
To maybe like just sewing into yourself a little bit more in whatever those things, you know what I mean, those things are. I think like I'm going through this too, where it's like the sense of I don't know what to do, but I want to open myself up. Like I don't want to be closed off, whatever that is, whatever energy that's putting out, whatever, you know, I'm like, I want to be ready. And I keep seeing these places where maybe I'm not. I don't want to sit there and go, well, you have to be perfectly at a place. And I think that it's just kind of like this energetically, there are going to be these blocks in our way, and you can choose to push through it, but kind of like what's on the other side. It's kind of like working with the energy in this as well. It's kind of like, oh, I can I can sit with myself and feel what is in my way, or I can punch through the wall and find, you know, somebody who's equally not ready to take care of a relationship and sort it out with them, and then come back and be like, what was in my way? You know, it's it doesn't mean that we can't work it out in relation, but it's probably going to be a little bit rougher, and so we want to be working with people who are as willing, who want to choose to step into. So it's not a matter of not choosing to be in relationship or certain experiences or having the discussions. It's just a matter of like doing with people who are sincere,
right,
and who make us feel valued, and you know what I mean, who show up. There's a lot of different things that I know that you and I both have kind of painted some red flags pink, you know, for certain people, and just been like, oh, it's just what they are going through something or whatever, you know. And I'm like, it's not really up to me, you know. You either show up or you don't, right. And that's for me too.
I agree.
But we have to be also willing to communicate for the things that we really want. And something popped into my head yesterday that it said to me, like, if you can't say it, you're not ready for it. And I was like, okay. Well, that makes sense then, right? If you're not ready, if you can't say, like, verbalize it or present it or express it where it needs to go, then you're still working through you know what I mean, something. So it's not a matter of like, it's okay to just wait. It's okay to be patient. It's okay to sit with ourselves. And sometimes we need to jump into things, but we also need to know when that time is right as well. It's not a matter of, again, like busting through a wall. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's a matter of just like taking a leap and just knowing when those opportunities are ripe versus when we are trying to force them. And I don't think that's anything we can learn beyond experience, because that's what it is. It's just a matter of like learning those things for ourselves.
Right.
So so this is like halfway point through the year.
Okay. We're looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the progression of it is nice.
Yeah, I agree.
Starting especially from a place that kind of feels, you know, kind of harsh and not as exciting. I know how that feels, you know, to see stuff like that, but then it starts to open up. Do you want to look at like the midpoint of the year first, or do you want to look at summer?
We'll do the midpoint of the year.
Okay. So we're moving through this inner strength.
Passion.
Wow. So, okay. I mean, that's not the worst. What did you say earlier when we were starting this? You said something about something's not in the cards earlier.
Oh, when I dropped all the chakra love cards all over the place. Oh, well, love's not in the cards for me. Prayer answered.
So
my heart is open to love.
So isn't that interesting? Like, based on like what we just talked about. So it's all about, am I willing? What is your choice? You know, what is your choice? Are you going to let your heart open because it can't receive what you want with a hard, icy shell over top of it?
Right. And
that's what that's literally the message that you got to start. And this is at the midpoint of the year. You're starting to look at where this is. So this is like about 6 months or so.
Yeah. Maybe
a little more. But now you're kind of looking at like where you come from. If you step into this now, is essentially what it's saying. You've already been working with so much of this. Like you said, you've sat with a lot of things. If you start to just, whatever is going on here at the beginning of it, that first little bit that you need to unlock, that you start to find that balance in yourself, when you step forward into that, because what comes before this is like mentorship. It's like essentially the phase of where you're learning, where you've sought out counsel. You know what I mean? Like, you've looked for answers in other places. You're not just isolating yourself and keeping your head down.
Right.
That's what's happening. So it's like you're ready to take what you have and move forward with it. But how do you do that? People move forward all the time with all kinds of bullshit. So I mean, so that's basically when you get yourself in balance, when you go in and find whatever that is, that's like making you feel shaky, and you start to really softly let that I say fall away from you, but it's a soft thing, and it might again be something that's like the answers. Even maybe it's like, oh, you have an idea for an activity or something that you want to do with your family, with your friends, something that makes you feel nourished, and maybe that's where you meet people, you make the connections that you're meant to make,
right?
And maybe that's what pulls you forward. And so it's a matter of like getting out of your comfort zone, maybe even stepping into your comfort zone a little bit more, but in a different way, like for your enjoyment. Be like, I'm going to do this because these are things that I wanted to do.
Right.
And I think you're already doing that in a lot of ways, but it's like, you know what that feels like to step off of, like, you have small kids. It's like your priorities are
kids.
You know, it's not, but that doesn't mean that they might be integrated, and they are integrated in all this, but they might be integrated into, they're going to be integrated in parts of that. You're not going to have a whole energetic clearing and fun and like, sorry kids, it's all my fun now, mom's fun. Like, it's, there's parts of this that are absolutely for you, and parts of this that are integrating those that you love.
Right.
And I think that is like kind of the theme of that particular, each of those relationships, each of those experiences can become more fulfilling. This is even funny too, with the little heart and the open hands too. And like, I know it's already says, you know, my heart is open to love, but again, that's your choice,
right?
To go in, to unlock whatever it is, to work with yourself, to balance yourself out softly, to take that forward, and that just like is going to start to blossom into something for you personally that you're going to feel on a different level. All right, ready for summer?
I sure am.
Soul healing. Which it seems like you've already been on that path, right? But that works along really well with like the grief and energetic clearing ideas that you're stepping into this whole thing. I love again and again the like open hands. Because this again is like that same sort of thing. When your guard is up, we can't receive. Right. So I think it has a lot more to do with that. With the energy that we're moving into, and this is not to do with the year. This is just the energy that we're moving into right now while we're talking about it. But it can help facilitate like the understanding of it. And if you're writing it down or planning for it or whatever, it can make more sense of it rather than like if you're in a completely different headspace, that you're not going to be able to receive the information essentially, so it's your readiness to receive it that kind of lets it in.
Right.
So like with the next moon phase that we're moving into is more of like it's a lot more about community and friendship and belonging, connection. So the energy that is like building momentum, like have this like really quiet, like, and I say light and dark, but again, a lot of this is very personal, intimate, emotional energy,
right?
Which could be shared, but right now it's probably not. It's probably just for you right now.
It is.
But as you're, you know what I mean? It's just like the frame of mind that we can get moving from this. It's just about setting intentions and about aligning and preparing your energy is like, again, this deep, quiet, soulful, intimate, and then it kind of moves into like this more expansive, collaborative energy.
Right.
So it is like important to like when we reveal like these kind of messages and things to ourselves, we can't always receive it at the same place. So like if you got this a year ago, you wouldn't be in the same place. Right? You'd still be receiving different information. It would be at the place that we're ready to receive it. Okay, so soul healing, the Wheel of Fortune. So that's the turning point. Essentially, like that's a 180 from
grief,
from where we started.
Yeah.
And that again is like a life point. If you have done done this work and just stepped into it, and it's not like I don't think it's difficult work. I think not the worst of it is always behind us. We always have more, stuff that we're working through, but like I think you've done the hardest parts already.
Yeah.
And I don't think it doesn't mean that we don't have more, you know, pain or confusion that comes in the future, because everyone has that. But I think it's like the confidence of being ready to understand, you know, loss and grief at a different level. Because I think you and I both understand, like, coming off of relationships that we have, that there are some things that we will never participate in again. Like, there are some things that we won't stick around for as long, and that we won't tolerate, and things like that. And it's not that you and I had no fault in the situations, but there were a lot of things that we fed into hoping to see what we were promised. And that's not the way that it takes a lot. It takes a lot of choice. That's a bitterness that I hold personally, that's hard for me to let go of, is when someone takes my choices away by lying to me. Because you really just, like, we can both move on in our own directions and whatever it is, but you don't, when you take my choices by making me believe something that you never intended to follow through on, that still fucks me up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand why people do stuff like that. So there's a part of me personally that hardens from that. Like, is anyone ever telling the truth? Like, I have to see you, who you are and your character, really, before I let you get very close to me. And that's just the way that I am. But there is almost a place of it that's too resistant. That's too, you know, pushes back too hard. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to feel like that forever. So I know, you know what I mean? Like, what the pushback feels like, and then trying to shift into, like, the softness is not the easiest thing to do. Even though it's not the hardest thing to do, it's not the easiest thing to do ever, is let your guard down. Right. So that is, I think, why it all comes around the way that it does. First, you create equilibrium, and out of chaos comes creation. Didn't we have something about creation at the beginning somewhere? Or no, never mind. I made that up from somewhere else. Just kidding. Don't worry about me. It might have been in here or something. But that is kind of like the sense of things, like taking all these pieces of a life that you're like, holy fuck. And I think that we all feel like that, no matter how brilliant and beautiful and promising our lives seem to be out in front of us. We all have this sense of, like, holy fuck, like, it's too much, I can't handle it, or whatever. Everyone has a sense of that, at least at some point. Right. And I think, like, if we're fortunate, we get encouraged to sit in the complexities in order, like, to feel confident enough to put the pieces together. Right. And we don't get too discouraged by not putting them in the right places or not understanding what they mean. So it's like slowing everything down, not rushing anything forward, because once they're weaved together intricately, it's just like, it might be just like one little piece, one little thing that's inside that's keeping, you know, the hardness there. And I don't think it's a matter of forcing it through. I think it's a matter of just enjoying yourself more fully. Yeah, in order to open that up.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so how you feel so far about summer? Summer's looking good.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah? Well, can I hang out? Can I hang out with you this summer? Okay, so let's skip over really quickly and move kind of into fall, and then sorry, I don't want to do that yet. Like, no, shh, you didn't see nothing. It's not what I meant to do, but what was it? What did I mean to do? I meant to pull this out. Silly me. Anyway, so we're jumping over. I don't even know if I should. See, I'm terrible at this. This is like why I don't do these. This is why I don't do live streams, like, of stuff like this. So in summer, that soul healing, like, if you choose to step into this, if you choose right now, and this is now, okay? So I know I've said that like 4 times, but to clarify that again, this is right now. We'll save that for after. It's special. It's a special. So whatever you're feeling right now, you step into that with a sense of, like, whatever pans out from this is meant for my best. Mm-hmm. Just drop everything on the ground. And no matter what comes, and that's why it says no expectations. Right? No matter what comes from this, it might feel dark, it might feel ugly, you might have feelings like, oh, is that really me? Do I really think those things? Like, no matter what it is, sit with all of it, Because a lot of the ugliness inside of us comes from a misunderstanding or protection when we're small, things that we cannot process. We can't protect ourselves from, we can't deal with. We just can't. And by the time we have the tools, sometimes that shit is packed so far down that we can't. And that is like an actual like scientific like part of trauma, is that it like, not trauma, just experiences, they get locked into our DNA. Like they literally get stuck there, and stuff from past generations can get wired into our DNA. So it's like, not even can, like our DNA is wired by past generations, but like actual like experiences, trauma, like from the women in generations before we even ever were considered, their trauma can actually pass through, not just experience, not just like the household, physically. So we can have these feelings and stuff that we don't know where they come from. And sometimes those are like ancestral, they're literally ancestral patterns built in the same way as any other part of us. And it doesn't mean that we can't make it healthier. We all have these predispositions, but we can make them healthier for ourselves. Psychic development. Let's see, Queen of Swords. So I think it's like that, this just a sense of really knowing yourself, not saying what keeps you safe, but really like, I think that is a lot of what it is, knowing on the deepest level, I can take care of myself, I can keep myself safe, I can protect my kids, I can take care of my shit, things that were choices that you did not have when you were small. Like I can take care of it my way, I can trust myself. There's a lot of different layers from different experiences, both from your experiences, but also the aftermath, like recoiling and trying to protect you from those experiences that are just, you didn't have a choice in any of it. Right? So it's like that for probably every child too. And if we can't process it then what do we do with it? We like kind of lock it away, and it becomes some sort of dysfunction that we're comfortable with, or becomes something that we recoil from and that we maybe are reacting to. This is divinity. Recognize the divine in the mirror. So I think it's like really just this sense of like on the deepest level, knowing who, you know what I mean, who you are in ways that were not available to you, like in ways that like I can't trust myself, I can't protect myself, whatever. Like once you have that intuitive sense of like, I know exactly who to let near me and who not to, in almost in a very precise way, that's gonna like fuel you. And I don't think that you have to do anything with it necessarily. It's just this like confidence from where you have been, this turning point even in like the entirety of that mindset in what you've been processing and what you've been going through. Because so moving into fall, I think you just like have a lot. It's just such a progression of learning to love yourself and see yourself in a different way. I think there'll be there's gonna be external type of nurturing here that's gonna help you then mirror back deeper again. Like there's a certain sense of self-love here, right? You have to have before you can see it in others. You can see it mirrored back. But then when people show us love that we've not experienced before, they show us a sense of value and appreciation that we've not experienced externally, because our expectations haven't been high enough, or we've just never really, I don't know, there's a lot of things that I look at and I'm like, wow, I just never had expectations of certain people. Like I just never expected more of them, and they really didn't care about me that much. And it's like, wow, really wild to see that like 15 years later. That's like a lot of good it does me now, but like it is what it is. But there is that sense of, I think, the mirror that we get from seeing ourselves appreciated in ways that we haven't before. like I love this because it's self worth, love, value, respect, but it's, look at the face of it, of the little pig is almost kind of being admired. You know, it's like you're feeling that, not just declaring it. I love myself and whatever. It's really having that sense of almost kind of like circling back to this, that little side eye smile, like it's more than you, it's a lot more love than you even realize. What goes with this? This one. I am ambitious and motivated.
Ooh.
And I think that even like because of how that's shifting into this, you have this kind of going into this unsure place of, you have like this massive like opening and clearing, what it really says, you have this energetic clearing for more pleasure and play. That's what 2024 is. So this was 2023. This is winter. So 2024 starts here. And look at what starts to shift. That this clears, that grief clears, and it starts to open up into something new. Did you read the back of this one yet?
I don't think so.
Let's pull that one before we pull, because we're starting to move into like that energy.
In what area are you lacking pleasure right now? Maybe in certain relationships or with work. Is it possible to shift the seriousness of life to experiencing a more creative, wild, and playful side of you? Today's soul action. What would happen if you added more play and laughter into your life? What area is lacking this right now? Take time to play. Let go of any need to produce anything. Interesting.
That is really interesting, even on the level that we're talking about, because what you want, right, or what you want to open yourself up to, it's kind of like this sense of like, when we want, I think we talked about this before, the energy of wanting is not the same as having. Those are, if you sit in both of those, this is a having energy, right? That's very different than like seeking, wanting. You know what I mean? Like there's a desperation to that, where there's a security in this. It's not, doesn't mean that our eyes aren't on the same prize. It's just a different sense of where it's coming from. And I think I was listening to these body language experts talk about something, but they were talking about your body's either opening or closing. And I'm like, that's interesting, because there's a lot of ways I'll draw my eyes away from people, or I'll kind of like I do things, and I'm like, I don't want to do those things. Like I don't want to feel afraid. What are the things within me that are making me feel afraid to connect? I'll show you something I journaled in here yesterday too, that's just like, because that's what is it? Like, why do I do it? Why do I pull away?
Right.
I don't know why, but I want to sort that out. And it seems like, so like to not be so fixated on the end goal, but how you want to feel, how you want to be loved, how you want to be cared for and appreciated. And not that you don't do those things, but even like maybe changing the energy of some of the things that you do for yourself, that it's not for any reason other than like, I fucking want to. I love it. And I mean, I know you do that in some ways, but there are some ways that you maybe hold yourself back from. Sewing into yourself on those levels, or you justify, or, because people out of love and protection, they want to keep us safe too. But sometimes like the biggest thing that people can do for us is give us the, you know what I mean, that freedom just to take the leap, say, I trust you to handle your shit. That's like sometimes the biggest gift we can give to somebody, is just like take our expectations off of their shoulders. And say, you are moving into, you're becoming, and I see it, I've seen what you've sewed into yourself, and I trust you to handle your shit. To me, that's a gift. Okay, so now we're coming through to like the end of next year. So this is the full cycle of a year. We start here, kind of like in this fall, moving into winter. Here's fall, moving into winter. So this is like how you've moved through. So this is where you're reflecting on the year.
Prosperity.
Which is so interesting, again, it's more like, I like to see like how their bodies are positioned, like basking, right? That's what this passion card felt like too. It feels like very confident in what it's, in what that energy is. It's very focused on where it's supposed to be. So this feels like just basking in what you have sewn into. And really, like, I think knowing during crisis, the Holy One herself may be emptying you of fear and attachments, preparing you to receive her luminous plan. And isn't that like kind of a luminous?
Yeah, it is.
A little bit of a luminous plan.
Mm-hmm.
The illusion. So like reflecting, to me, even this part right here is kind of reflecting on where we started.
Yeah.
And where, like, there's a little shark inside the brain, and you're spearing the little shark, and that's, I think, what it is. It's just like the idea of like what am I creating, and maybe putting too much pressure on yourself in ways that like there's something actually just real subtle to unlock, to open up, so your heart can actually receive this. I think it has so much to do with your body and your heart being able to receive this. So even if this wasn't now, even if this wasn't winter, whenever you choose to step into this, that's when it kicks off the first domino. It's not necessarily like 2023, 2024. It's not necessarily like a year progression, but at the same time, you can't just, this isn't tomorrow. Right. We don't jump into things that quickly. They show up that quickly. They feel like that when we're doing the work. They all of a sudden they're like boom, but it isn't as quickly as flipping the cards over. It doesn't happen like that.
My happiness is a choice I make.
Kind of interesting as a full circle moment, I think, that one, especially spearing the little shark and the prosperity, the energetic clearing. All right, this one popped out earlier.
Attract through glow.
So her luminous plan.
Yeah.
Consider how attractive is a luminous plan versus a hardened heart. And I don't mean attractive, right? Like physically attractive, like, but I mean, it's like that, we're talking the magnetism, that energy, the body's either opening or closing. It's that. And when this shows up, do you want to be closed? Because you wouldn't even see it. You wouldn't even recognize it. Right. You would be in the same pattern of whatever way that you shut people out, or you're not ready to receive what you want yet, you would do it again then too. Because that's just what our patterns are like. So whenever you choose to step into this, that's like the first domino. Because it really, like said, the hardest work's been done already. You stepping into equilibrium, balancing yourself. It might kind of feel uncomfortable as soon as you step into that and you own it and you get like real cozy right here. It all like starts to open up.
All right, I'm ready.
How you feel?
Feel good. I mean, I definitely feel like I have done a lot of the hard work. I think I guess now it's just becoming comfortable with the things that I have noticed with myself, and then like you said, once I do that, then all this will happen.
I think it's really, really clear that like the things that you want are going to come to you the more that you open, the lighter that you are on yourself. And it really, like, when we speak of lightness, it's light, but it's in all senses. It's the sense of heaviness. It's, that cracks let the light in. Heard of that? Like, that's what all this is. Like, it using the elements, the energy, working with it in like the subtle ways. So at least you're like, I saw this coming. We talked about this. So when it feels confusing or ugly, you go, no, this is where this is it. If it feels like this, no, this is the thing I need to step into just a little bit. I got to open this up. And you can expect that in every sense of it. So every time you go in, open this up, you are continuing to like to step into this. So it's telling you already at this point, like when you need to like when things are feeling out of control, when you feel out of this equilibrium, you already know what to do. Step into something that makes you feel satisfied, softer, happier, and get a sense of that. Square away with that, because you're a Capricorn and stuff, so you got to square away that first. Square away what you know you need to do, because you've already been doing this work. You've already been doing all this. I need to let go. Like, so when things feel heavy, they feel confusing, whatever, the key is to even take like a note from your kids from time to time, because that is what it is. It's the inner child sense. We have to remember what that is. What does this need? It's usually not harshness. It's usually not you fucked up again, or you're so stupid, or like but we do that as adults because we think like, oh, we should have learned by now. But that's not what actually heals the wound. Like, we feel stupid. We talk to ourselves like that or whatever it is because we have a misunderstanding of self. Do you think people who are really self-assured call themselves stupid when they make a mistake? No. They might be like, oh, God, but they don't really go, oh, you're such an idiot, and like go down that rabbit hole of pulling themselves down. That really does, our self-talk really does affect who we are, the expectations that we have about what's in us, what we're afraid of. Like, we see it in the world all over the place.
Right.
People aren't reacting upon like things that have happened to them a lot of times. They're reacting on their hysteria of what might happen because they can't trust anybody else. Nobody else trusts themselves. And it's true. And everybody just goes off the rails. People are not aligning to who they are, their character. They're not sitting with it. It doesn't mean that we can control everything, but there are a lot of people in a lot of places that a lot of wild things are happening, and they can't control that either. It's kind of like we have to take things as they come, but there are things that have happened to us that we had to put away for a while, and sometimes those come to the surface over and over, and it makes a lot more sense to look at it, to deal with it, not even deal with it, but like to assess it as it comes, to be gentle with it, rather than running from it forever.
Right.
Because that kind of cascades a different sense. Like, that's going to cast a shadow over all of this. Doesn't mean you can't have a relationship. Doesn't mean that you can't have things. It's just not going to feel as fulfilling.
Right.
It's not going to feel as nice. And you want someone who is stepping into that for themselves as well. If you're not, you won't be able to meet them where they are.
Right.
And so it's like all about just like this sense of timing. Things are there's a lot more love, a lot more appreciation, a lot more goodness than you've ever experienced. I mean, to not say it like, boldly, like I know that you've experienced a lot of wonderful things, but there's so much more like appreciation and just like that sense of like intimate trust, things like that. That's like, I know that it's not been honored for you. It's a hard to let your guard down, to let those things in, because it doesn't feel right on the surface, but deep down, over and over and over, it's saying like the brightest light comes from within you. It comes from when you soften, from when you let whatever is heavy, whenever it comes, if you focus into that, it starts like to like tick up this progression, because the hardest stuff is here. Be gentle with yourself, step into it, just find that sense of balance. Again, it's that inner equilibrium. Satisfied with what I can do as much as I can. You know what to do. You center yourself there, and it reaffirms a sense of confidence. You're able to look at the experience with like softer eyes. Your boundaries aren't freaking iron walls, like you're able to kind of like let things in and assess things as they come. And that comes with just knowing yourself. That's when you start to like be able to receive.
Yeah.
Not just a person, not just a companion, not just an attention, and that's the difference, is to sew into something that feels it starts with sewing into you. And then like, it really is like midway through the year, it's like that turning point.
Alright.
So we start from here, you get the sense of yourself, but then you just like realize like it's all patterns, it's all cycles, this happens over and over and over. We start something new, we learn, you know what I mean? We step into it, you just keep taking the step, and it just amplifies this over and over and over to where you're able to receive more of that. And I think the lightness of it, this is the overall thing. It's, you can have stuff, but what does it feel like when you have it? Do you feel good? Like, does it feel like you're basking in it? Does it make you feel nice and confident and happy? And
Right.
a lot of people are with other people, or they have stuff just to possess it. You know, they just to have it. And what do you want? You don't want to carry things around that aren't meant for you. So
That was awesome.
welcome to 2024. Well, thanks for doing this. We got to take a